Thank you to the Westminster Center for Faith and Service and the Black Student Union for sponsoring this podcast. Welcome back to After the Tassel. This is episode 2. We are joined with Celeste Cummings, who is a former Westminster student. We are still partnering with the Center for Faith and Service to kind of tackle some topics of diversity, as well as your mindset after you graduate, potential taking a gap year, and other opportunities like that. Celeste, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Celeste Cummings. I graduated from Westminster May of 2019. I was a biochemistry major with a chemical emphasis and minored in mathematics. Lots of fun. So
Great.
Now after graduation, I have been adulting, which is interesting. I pay bills.
Crazy how that works, right?
My free time outside of working, I like to go on hikes. I spend lots of time with my dog, Baxter. I got Baxter my second semester of senior year, so some people might have seen him around. He's a 5-pound Pomeranian toy poodle mix, so a Pomeranian poodle.
Oh,
That's adorable. Great. Then our hosts today is myself, Clay Osceola, Mandy Plybun. You want to say hi, Mandy?
hello.
And Michelle Craighead.
Hi there.
So yeah, without further ado, I think we'll just go ahead and start jumping into the questions if Michelle or Mandy would like to take the lead on that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So Celeste, thank you for joining us and taking time out of your busy day to answer these questions for us. And again, we're all learning about each other, so we're just pleased that you agreed to participate. So can you just tell us a little bit more about your career path after you graduated from Westminster?
Yeah, and thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited to do this. So after Westminster, I decided to take a gap year because I knew that I wanted to go back to school. And so my dream job was to work in a research lab at Washington University in St. Louis, because I'm also from St. Louis, so easy. I didn't have to move anywhere or anything. So I currently work as a research technician in a pediatric critical care research lab for Gina Clemens, and I've been there for a little over a year now.
Okay.
So why did you stated that you wanted to do a gap year because you already knew you wanted to go back to school. When did you make that decision that you wanted to do a gap year instead of going straight from graduating from Westminster into a graduate program?
Okay, so that's a good question. Because my mom was not a fan of the gap year, and some people that were close to me also weren't, because they had this fear that I wasn't ever going to go back to school. But originally going into school, so when I first started Westminster, I was very much like, all right, I'm going to do this in 4 years, and then I'm going to go to medical school, and I had this all mapped out. And it didn't really pan out that way. So in order for me to go straight into medical school after graduation, I had to take the MCAT, I think, during my junior year, and that didn't plan out. So then it was like, oh, I'll just take 1 year off, and so I'll take it my senior year. And then I just didn't have the motivation to also study for the MCAT while studying for my courses that I was enrolled in and still taking at Westminster. And so I was like, okay, I'll work. I'll take a break, because I also was really burnt out, because I went so hard in high school and then I was going so hard in college that it was just like I really needed a break. And so during this time, because originally I wanted to do an MD PhD program, so I wanted to do medical school and a PhD. And so during this time, had that in mind, but also I just didn't feel motivated to do things. I didn't feel this connection, and it felt like I was really trying to force it. So I also pushed myself to really pay attention to what felt right and what I found myself drawn to, and what was really interesting, and what I found myself being passionate towards. And so I actually decided that instead of doing an MD PhD program, I wanted to go to chiropractic school. So next fall, so next September, I'll be attending Logan University for the Doctor of Chiropractic program.
Nice. So tell us, what made you decide to go into chiropractic? What interests you about the field now?
Yeah, so funny story, I used to be terrified of chiropractors. Like, the idea of somebody touching my neck, it scared me. I'm like, oh gosh. And I've had like back problems for as long as I can remember. I have scoliosis, and back in high school I went to physical therapy, and it helped some, but it didn't really fix the problem, or I still was experiencing a lot of pain. And a few days into my freshman year, I actually got into a car accident. And so I had a lot of neck and back problems, and I still wasn't trying to go to the chiropractor. And it wasn't until my senior year when we do, oh my goodness, the brick blast. So the first table when I walked in was a chiropractor. It's Dr. Kelling, Dr. Bruce. He's in Fulton. And I was like, well, this must be a sign. And so I made an appointment. And after a few sessions, I realized that I was no longer like in pain, or wasn't as in much, or not as, if the pain wasn't as bad. And I still wasn't like, oh, I want to become a chiropractor, but I was like, hey, everybody, you guys should really go see chiropractors. Like, this is the real deal. And it wasn't until last October I went to DC for a trip, and I had met a chiropractor. Her name is Dr. Tarsha. And after talking to her and about my experience and her experience and how she became a chiropractor, I really started considering the idea of maybe pursuing that as a career. And then also I have a chiropractor, Dr. Robin Lawrence in St. Louis, that I go to now. And she also is a really big help in that. So that's kind of how I discovered that I was interested in chiropractic care.
You talked a little bit about your path, your career path, and you mentioned a piece about being burnt out, your last 2 years of college. And we know a lot of our students, listening, maybe on the verge of burnout, or they're already burnt out and they don't know. How could you tell for yourself that you were burnt out? How could you tell that things were kind of spiraling out of control for you?
So I would say I hit my burnout really early in college. Well, I don't know, really early for me, and I never really fixed it. So I think that if you go about burnout in a healthy manner and really address it, then like you can kind of like reverse it. But like I hit this burnout, and then it was just really hard to like go through the rest of college. But I hit mine first semester of sophomore year. I was taking Calc 3, and I just was not having a good time. It was seeing 3D models on a flat surface, and I just was like, oh, okay. And I knew that looking back at it, I know that it was burnout just because I just like hit a really hard time. Like, I was really sad. I had low motivation. It was just really hard to like go to class, and because all my life I had been going to class, doing homework, go to sleep, repeat. And so looking back at it, that's how I know that it was the whole burnout. Because when I'm not burnt out, I'm motivated, I'm going, like I'm thriving, I'm taking the information. And so it's just really important to know how you normally function, and then noticing when things aren't normally how their things aren't what they used to be.
Yeah.
Celeste, I just have a follow-up question to that. Did you utilize any of the campus resources to help with the burnout, or to help to try to get motivated to finish school?
So not at first, but because at first when I realized that I was like, okay, I'm not really happy. I'm not really feeling this. And so then like my junior year, I focused more on like having fun and doing things like outside of school. So still having a life. And then going into my senior year, I want to say the beginning of my second semester, I actually started going to counseling because I noticed that I had I was kind of like in this negative mindset. And so I wanted to have a more positive outlook on things. And so I started going to counseling, which was really helpful. So everyone listening, it's free. Take advantage of it. And you don't necessarily have to be sad. For sure, if you are sad, it's always helpful to talk to somebody, but it's just an hour for you to talk about yourself and just have that time, because especially I'm used to being like the strong friend. So I'm always there for my friends, and I'm always that person that like they can lean on and they can talk to. And so it was just really important and really special to me to have that time where it was just 60 minutes where I got to just talk about everything that was on my mind, on my chest, what was weighing on me, what's going well, what's not going well. So if you haven't used the counseling services, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Celeste. It's not, counseling isn't just if you have major trauma going on, or if you're depressed or sad or anxious. It could be as simple, and I know the listeners can't see that air quotes,
Right.
as struggling with studying and you're really overwhelmed. It could just be that feeling of being overwhelmed, or just having burnout from being a student, because you're right, you're a student for, how many grades?
4 years.
Well, I mean, before that, like from kindergarten grade,
Yeah,
you're on you have that same day-to-day routine all the way up through college. And at a certain point, I think we all hit that wall where it's like, oh, we're done.
Yeah.
I need a break. I can't do this.
Yeah. And you said you were really active in high school, and we have a lot of students that are so active in high school, and if they come from a smaller school, they were so involved in so many clubs, and they had all sorts of leadership positions, and so they feel naturally led because of their motivation or leadership skills to get involved on campus here. And while that's perfectly good intention, I think they find sometimes where they can't say no. They have a hard time saying no, and they just don't create really healthy boundaries, and they feel maybe trapped,
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want our students to feel that way. They can say the clubs and organizations, they don't have to be in everything, but having that healthy balance between schoolwork and being involved in their social life, in their self, taking that time for yourself to really recharge. Like you said, you're the beginning of your junior year or senior year, going out with your friends and, trying to have a good time. That's important too. It's not just about academics.
For real.
So,
that actually leads into the second question really nicely. So Celeste, if you could offer your college-age self any advice, what advice would you give?
Yes, I would tell college-age Celeste to, especially in the first 2 years, to have more fun, to, to still experience things and not to stress out as much, because that's one thing is that, especially as science majors, we know like what stress does to the body. We know how important sleep is, but yet we do like the complete opposite. And so many like diseases and complications come from stress. And 9 times out of 10, things are going to work out. So like us stressing out about it just makes it harder on ourselves. And so I would just say, like, relax. It's all going to work out. You're going to finish school. You're going to get the grades that you need to get. So just like have fun, do things. You don't have to wake up, do school from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. after labs, and then try to force yourself to study and all that. And I would also tell her to pay attention to her body.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. I'm just not as productive like in the afternoon and like early evening. But yeah, I had this idea that I was supposed to go to class and then I was supposed to study afterwards and then, then enjoy my evening. But like, I just function better like working in the morning, taking a break, and then I get like a second win like in the evening. And so just being mindful and like knowing that just because something works for somebody, like, we're all different. And so there's so many different ways to go about things, that figure out what works best for you and then do it. And then also pay attention, because things change. So just because something worked for the past few months, like maybe I need a different routine or a different schedule for the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm. And I think you really hit a good point there where you said, like, do what's best for you. Sometimes I think we get into this mindset of like, well, I'm not as good as X person, and like X person can handle this, and that, while I can't even do any of that stuff. And I find myself falling into that rut all the time, just comparing myself to other people. And I think it's really important, especially for people just coming into college and stuff like that. Like, everybody has their own work style. Everybody has their own, ways of being productive. And like my therapist would tell me how, like, if you need a day of rest, that's being productive in its own way. And I think we really lose sight of that. And we're stuck in this culture where we need to see results, something tangible, something like right in front of our eyes. And whenever in reality, like, we can't always give those tangible things without, having those days of rest, or, taking some time just for yourself to like regenerate and recharge. But yeah, no, and that's different for everybody. For some people, meditation might look like, working 9 to 5 and stuff like that, and, getting into their work floor that way. Other people, it's, working at 3 a.m. on homework and stuff like that. But yeah, everybody's different. So there's no cookie cutter model that you should try to change yourself to be. And I think that's a really powerful statement.
Yeah.
Right, that was such a good point. Yeah, we're very much stuck in like this grind culture. So it's like, go, go, go. I have to wake up at the crack of dawn, and I have to work until I go to sleep. And rest is, like Clay said, rest is productive, because you have to recharge. You have to take those moments. And so when you take out that time to just relax, because I think that we're so hard on ourselves that it's like, oh, if I didn't complete my to-do list, then I wasn't productive. But whatever you did, you were productive, and that's what you needed to do, and that's what you did. And that's something that I'm still working on, because like I'll be so hard on myself, and I'm like, oh, I really wanted to finish this and this, but rest is so important. And that's another way how you combat this burnout. So when you take care of yourself and you're mindful of like, all right, I'm really starting to get tired. I'm really starting to get irritable. I need to just take a break. I need to just go ahead and meditate, do yoga, read a book, take a walk. It really helps with the whole burnout. Yeah.
And I think, and you kind of that grind culture that you mentioned is like why I feel like we as, a society really look down on a gap year. Cause it's like, oh, you're like, oh, you're taking a break from school. Like, come on.
Right.
Because we want those, we think that you should go, 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 go. Always, always, always. And like you said, it leads to that really bad burnout. And at the end of the day, I think people just need to realize that, they are in control of their lives. You don't have to succumb to whatever people are telling you to do. At the end of the day, it's your decision, right? And
exactly.
And if a gap year is what you need, then a gap year is what you need, or gap years.
Right, exactly. So gap year, but it can really be as much time as you want.
Correct. And but yeah, there's a lot of outward pressure to kind of fit this model and fit this cookie cutter thing that we need to be in society. And I think it's going to take time to really combat that in today's standards.
Yeah. And I think it's a generational thing too. My parents, they live by that model whenever they were working. They're both retired now, but that was how they managed, and they don't mind working that 9 to 5, and they're very busy, active people now in retirement. And me and my older brother, we adopted some of that, but I also saw how being busy all the time can create anxiety, and there's no padding or white space in your schedule. You need that. So I mean, as far as changes from your college lifestyle, Celeste, to now, how does the work-life balance look like now to you? I mean, we've obviously established that it's really important to you, but how do you manage it in your life now that you're a young professional?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first, after graduation, I promise you, I slept like 2 weeks straight. I'm so tired.
Man.
And I was like sleep for like 2 weeks. But the work-life balance is really important to me because my mom, she's definitely my biggest support system, and she works for Boeing. I will say that she's a computer engineer, but she will tell me that that's not what she is. She's a product lifecycle manager. I don't know what that means, but she's been working there for 30 plus years, and she definitely is given so much of herself for us to be able to live the life that we live, and I'm very appreciative. But she also had to make sacrifices and miss out on certain things, and so seeing that, I just knew that that's not exactly what I want. I kind of want to be able to live and then leave work at work if possible. And so after seeing that, I kind of was too far on the relaxed side. So I've been trying to figure out that balance, because I went from working so hard to then being too relaxed. And so I'm just I don't think I've necessarily found the sweet spot yet, but I make time for things that I like to do. So I like to go on hikes. My best friend, Chelsea Sharp, she also graduated from Westminster, we'll find a different like hiking location, and on like Saturday or Sunday, we'll take Baxter out and just go explore and, find new places to adventure to. I also like to just hang out with family and friends, and my sister just had a baby, so I just recently became an auntie. So her name's McKenna. She's the sweetest 3-month-old I've ever met in my entire life. So I babysit, so I'll take time off of work and spend the day with McKenna. And so it's just so enough that I still feel like myself, but also I still have enough time to do what I need to do for work or upcoming school and things like that. So I haven't discovered the sweet spot, but I'm getting there.
And I think it's all, about experimentation, like you said earlier, just, try something for a couple of months, and if it doesn't work, try something else. You're not trapped in those decisions.
Exactly.
I also think that that it really depends on your season in life too.
Oh, sure.
So what work-life balance means to you now as a young professional will most likely be different if you choose to get married, if you choose to have children. And then it'll look different when your kids are older, where maybe they don't need you as much and you don't have to run around with them. So I think each season of all of our lives, that work-life balance definition will be different. So I think it's always got a constant search change for what that means for each of us. Yeah. So Celeste, I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit and come back to college life. So what led you to choose Westminster College?
I love that question. That might be one of my favorite questions because in high school, I always knew that I wanted to go to a small school. My mom had went to, I'll wait till this car passes by because I don't know if you guys can hear it. So, so I always knew that I wanted to go to a small school. My mom went to Fontbonne University, and well, when she went, it was Fontbonne College, but so she went to Fontbonne. And I remember at like a college fair when I was in high school, one of her math professors still knew who she was. And I was like, Mom, your math professor said hi. And that was just so meaningful to me because I'm like, my mom graduated from college however many years ago. And the fact that her professor, one, remembers her, and then two, remembers how much she liked her, and then three, remembered her enough to be like, hi, how are you? Was just like, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. And my older sister, she decided on going to Mizzou. And I remember when we went for like orientation and we got lost and I just was overwhelmed. I was like, I couldn't imagine being on a campus this large. I couldn't imagine being in lecture halls for classes. And so I just knew that that wasn't for me. So fast forwarding to my senior year of high school, I was in the guidance counselor's office and they were like, oh, this school, Westminster College, is coming. You should come check them out. And I was like, no, it's okay. And she was like, no, really, like it's like it's really competitive, like it's like a really good school. And I was like, no. And then she was like, you can get out of class. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go. And so honestly, I went because I was like, oh, I don't have to sit in class for an hour. Like, sounds like a good time to me. And so the St. Louis rep at the time was Terrence Sutherland, and he is the reason why Westminster was on my radar. Why I got into, well, not why I got into Westminster, but why I was able to attend. And so, he was talking about it and just like seeing how passionate he was about Westminster and him talking about his experience there. And it was just like, oh, well, maybe I should check it out. So I applied and I was like set. And so there was, I think it was called the Triple S Scholarship. It was for minority students. And so I applied for it and I didn't get it. And they were saying for like financial reasons, and which wasn't a requirement. And Taryn went so hard for me. Like, he was like, this wasn't a requirement. Like, there's no reason for it not to. And so they went back and they decided to give me the scholarship. And so that's the reason why I was able to attend Westminster. And that on its own meant so much to me because I was like, okay, he already, hooked me to Westminster, but the fact that he, went to fight for me so hard, I was like, I have to go to the school. And I remember I went for scholarship day and just like being on the campus and everybody just seemed so genuinely happy and excited to be there. It was not one person without a smile on their face. And I was just like, this is the place that I need to go. And that's how I ended up at Westminster.
Wow.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Well, and especially your enrollment counselor. And tell me his name again.
Terrence Sutherland.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I always am like, representation is such a huge thing because he also was another Black student that went to Westminster, and I can't say that if the representative was white, if I can't be like, no, I wouldn't have went, but I know that because he was Black and because I felt like I could relate, going from an area where it's predominantly Black and most of the people around me, so most people at my high school were Black, to going into a predominantly white institution and seeing him being like, oh, I loved it here, like I was fine. And so I was like, okay, like, and I just trusted him. And so representation is so important. And I think that was a big factor in everything that played out.
Okay, well, Celeste, so continuing, we're going to kind of go down this path of just talking about diversity, and your previous response right there is a perfect segue into these next few questions. so many students at Westminster come from small communities that are predominantly white without a whole bunch of diversity. So what advice would you give to entering students who may not have interacted with a person of color?
Yeah, I really like this question because it's definitely very real. Because I think that sometimes, because I actually have friends like in St. Louis who have never, if they might have went to certain schools like in St. Louis for college, and they haven't really been in a situation where it's a predominantly white environment or predominantly white institution. And so, so this is kind of like taboo to them, and then vice versa. And I would just tell those students to keep an open mind. Because, you know, we see a lot of things in the media, and the media, not everything you see is true or factual. And so to keep an open mind and to ask questions, but also with asking questions to do your own research. So like, if you're interested in a certain hairstyle, like I have a friend where on Snapchat, there's these channels and you can watch like different like shows or episodes and stuff, and there's this one called the Braid Up, and so there'll be different hairstylists and they do different like braiding hairstyles, and she'll like ask me questions or like bring up something. And just recently, a couple months ago, I cut my hair off. I had locks for the past 3.5 years, so that was a big change. And so like she was like asking about like, how did I retwist my hair, how did I do my hair? And so like there's a lot of resources out there. Like you know, it's really easy to just do a quick Google search, or so just to like do your own research and then just ask questions, and you know, soak up as much information as you want or as the person that you're talking to is willing to give you. But definitely ask questions.
Yeah. I think my fear would be of asking a question would be just the fear of offending them, you know, talking about their hair. I mean, have you ever been asked a question that you were offended by? And, you know, how would you tell a white student or a white person, you know, it's okay to ask me these questions? I mean, how do you even open that dialogue?
Right, exactly, because that can be a very nerve-wracking
Yeah.
thing, and offense is a very big thing, because it goes, you know, it can go both ways, because it could actually be offensive or it couldn't, and navigating that's a really big thing. So I have definitely had moments where because, you know, it's just with my hair, you know, when I came to Westminster, I didn't have locks yet. So I would have my hair braided or just different styles. And like one time I took my my twist down, and somebody's like, "Oh, did you cut your hair?" And I was like, no, like I just changed, like that wasn't my actual hair. And like trying to navigate that, and that can also be hard to navigate those conversations when you haven't had somebody from a different race ask you questions versus you asking somebody from a different culture these questions. And so I think that the best way is to just be open about it. So, you know, being like, hey, I'm really interested in your hair and I have these questions, and is it okay to ask you? And because I'm like thinking about it, and I would be like, oh, for me to like open up the floor, but also like I think it's just one of those things where if you're interested, like to ask questions, but also being as open and transparent as possible, and like, you know, just stating like, I'm really curious about this, and I've never seen anything like this, or I've seen pictures but I don't really understand. Is it okay for me to ask? And maybe that person says yes, or maybe that person says no. And I think that if you get that no, to respect it, but also not to let it like deter you from asking other questions or asking somebody else those questions, because just because one person might not want to talk about it doesn't mean that everybody's not going to want to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge point because, like, as somebody who's indigenous on campus and stuff like that, there's a lot of stigma and stereotypes that surround, Native American culture and stuff like that. And so I'll get asked every once in a while, like, well, what does, like, how does, like, the things like the Redskin logo and stuff like that, how does that, like, affect you and stuff like that? And it's nice to be asked those questions, especially whenever they're open and transparent, like Celeste was saying, like asking, well, I want to know this because, and I think pairing that because along with it can really differentiate if you're trying to make some sort of a stereotypical gesture towards it, or if you're actually just wanting to increase your understanding. And I think that's something that's really missing from society in general right now, is that we just don't have that understanding part of it. But yeah.
Well, and two, I think there would be a difference in asking the question, say if you were just in back or dining hall and you just stopped at a table and wanted to ask somebody about their hair or, their clothing or any, wearing any type of cultural or ethnic symbology, in their clothing, versus having that relationship to begin with and, starting from a place where you've already built rapport with them. So, and then it goes back again, how do we start developing those relationships? Because you walk into back or dining hall and you see the segregation right there, oftentimes, not always, that you will see the international students over here, and then you'll see a pocket of Black students over here, and then, your white students. We're a predominantly white institution. So how do we bridge those relationships? How do you just begin those dialogues? And I don't know, do the two of you, since Celeste, you're an alum, and Clay, you're a current student, how can we do that? How can we do that better?
Yeah, I'm so glad that we get to talk about this, because that was one of the things that I wanted to touch. I think that it starts by building a sense of community. And so when I was at Westminster, I knew that, like, faculty and staff and, I knew that I was valued in that sense. But as far as, like, my fellow, like, classmates, especially, like, the ones that I graduated with, I didn't feel a sense of connection with them and a sense of community as far as being a Black student. And I knew that they liked me because, like, we would have conversations, and I was an RA on campus. I was involved in various clubs and organizations. But, like, when it came down to being a Black student, like, I just didn't feel that sense of connection. You see them and they're really open to getting to know, like, the international students and about where they come from. But I didn't really get questions about, like, me being a Black student. And and the most that, like, people asked me were because when I first started, it was very recent after Mike Brown being murdered and the Ferguson protests and riots and everything. So, like, people would ask about that, and it would be more like oh, well, what was it like, and how close do you live, and was it scary, and things like that. But it never was really, like, about, like, like, how are you feeling, or what have you experienced. And so I didn't really start to even feel like a type of connection until everything happened recently with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and just seeing a lot of my classmates and, like, alums standing up and saying things. Like, it really meant a lot to me, because it showed that, like, it goes past just being, like, we had classes with each other, but to know that, like, you are concerned about, like, my well-being and people that look like me. Because it's one thing to be nice to somebody, but I want to know, like, behind closed doors, if somebody says something, that you're going to stand up for me and my culture. And and I think that building that sense of community is where you can start to bridge that gap, because it comes from, like, a level of comfort and it comes from, like, a level of comfort and then, like, that level of understanding. And so I think that once once you can build this community and people really feel like they're a part of the Westminster community as a whole, so as a Black student, as an international student, as a woman, as male, as, you know, whatever race, whatever culture, I think that's where it starts.
So yeah, for new listeners, we do a thing here called the Word of the Day, where we hide a secret passcode in the middle of the podcast, and if you email careersrv@westminster-mo.edu, the word of the day, then you are entered to win a gift card to a local business in Fulton. And Celeste, would you like to tell us what our word of the day is?
Yes, today's word is mindset.
Mindset. So you heard it here first. Mindset is the word of the day. Please email mindset to careersrv@westminster-mo.edu, and then you will be entered to win a gift card. But no, I think we're taking a very important step here already, just like giving platforms such as this podcast to kind of elevate people's voices and people's, things that we're not seeing X, Y, and Z. And I think this is a great way to start getting those voices heard that you usually don't hear from. And Celeste raised a great point about, just building bridges, making connections with the people around you. And we have a great opportunity being on a very small campus that, we see a large amount of the student body population every single day. It's very likely that you've seen, at least half of the campus. And it just takes, that simple reaching out, like, hey, I want to know this about you, and being transparent about those things. But yeah, I think we're doing a great job with, making sure that we are including multiple backgrounds and stuff and just normal day-to-day things like this. Like most of the organizations that you're a part of, they make it a point to try and have diverse populations. I know like my fraternity makes that a big point to have multiple backgrounds and stuff like that advocated for. But also, I mean, if you feel as if like you're not being heard, we have great outlets such as making clubs on campus that are a great opportunity. I know I've been in talks with making an Indigenous student union. I know that there's the Black student union. And those offer great opportunities in and of themselves to bring people to campus, to, just get these like-minded individuals together and really start growing in your guys' backgrounds and cultures and whatnot. So yeah, I think Westminster offers a lot, and it's just trying to, get those peoples with the quiet voices to hear this. And I think we're doing a great job with just doing this podcast. And that's why I was really excited to do it. One of the reasons I was very excited to do it. But yeah.
Celeste, were you a member of the Black Student Union while you're here on campus?
I'm so excited to talk about this. Yeah, so when I came on campus, we didn't have an official organization for Black students on campus. And so my roommate, freshman year, she actually ended up transferring, but we took it upon ourselves to help found the Black Student Union. So the BSU that exists on campus, we helped create it. We wrote the Constitution, we took it to SGA. And so when Clay said that, I was like, yes, that's a really good point. It's very possible to create a club on campus. And that's how BSU was created.
So why did you want to create this club? What was the point behind it? Or what was your mission?
Yes, so it started because during New Student Week, there was this comedy show, and I was so excited because actually all the members is from Wild 'N Out, which is the show on MTV, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to college, and they're bringing people from Wild 'N Out. This is great. And so at the time, like just being in the audience, it was like, okay, we have these Black comedians, and then something happened, and then they shut it down, and they were like, okay, we have to go, and they just like got kicked out. And we were just like, what happened? Like, that's that's strange. And so afterwards, it was because of a comment or a joke that they made, and it was offensive and all that. But at the time, we were like, what's happening? And so then we realized that, like, us as Black students on campus, we didn't really have an official group or an organization for all of us to get together and talk about, issues or things that might be happening or things that we're feeling or going through. And so that's kind of like what jump started it. But the goal was to bring together students, so not just Black students, but anybody that was interested, so that we could educate and spread information and knowledge about Black history, and just to spread knowledge and information about Black history, Black people, what it's like to be Black in America, and just things like that. So that was the whole goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like we said, there's plenty of opportunities to do that yourself. Or if you would like to join the Black Student Union or Alliance or the Center for Faith and Service, there's plenty of doors that can be open. So if you're interested in any of those things, to anybody listening, seek those out. We'll post some resources in the description below, so you'll have access to that, some emails and some links to check out. But yeah, Mandy, Michelle, do you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, so just spinning off the Black Student Union group, we've heard talk about a Black alumni group that has newly formed. Are you a part of that group?
Are you talking about the mentorship?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. That was another thing. I was so excited. I haven't heard anything recently, and I'm assuming because of, COVID and just how everything has been changed, and trying to navigate this new life that we're living in the midst of a pandemic. But I am definitely 100% all for this mentorship. And I think that it's an amazing program, an amazing opportunity, because that's another thing, is that when it comes to recruitment and getting more diversity on campus, as much as you can, post and brag about or reach out to students at schools about how great Westminster is, I think one of the most powerful aspects is word of mouth. And I think having a program like that, so that other Black students that are currently at Westminster have relationships with Black alums, is the perfect way. Because if the current students are loving and enjoying their experience at Westminster, they're going to tell all of their friends and family about how great Westminster is, and how you need to go, you need to go, you need to go. And I think that's how you ultimately get more diversity.
And how do students sign up with that mentorship? Where would a student go?
I don't know if those details have been
released yet.
I think they're just now kind of forming the group and gathering the alumni who are interested in being mentors. But Moulay, who's a current admissions counselor and a Westminster alum, who will be one of our interviewees in a couple weeks, he mentioned the alumni group to us, and we both thought it was a wonderful idea to help students and alumni connect, just for that reason, to help spread the word about Westminster and the importance of diversity on campus.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we want every student to feel supported in whatever way we can help them. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Celeste, is there a question that you've never been asked before that you want to be asked right now?
I wholeheartedly had a question, and I've been thinking about it, and I was so excited. I think that we touched on it because I was going to talk about the sense of community. What was I going to? I don't even remember now. I was in my kitchen making my lunch, and I was like, yeah, this is the question. But I was going back and forth about different things because I was thinking about the sense of like community, and then I also was talking about representation, but then I felt like I came up with something else. So I'm just gonna say no. I think that this was a great interview.
Okay.
That's how my mind works. You'll probably remember as soon as we're done.
I
Exactly.
know, and then I was like, oh no, but whatever we talked about was exactly what we needed to talk about.
Okay. Well, Clay, do you want us to lead us into the closing questions, the rapid fire questions?
Well, we actually need the word of the day.
Oh,
We already did that. We did that while you guys were doing your shenanigans with the computer. But yeah, so do you want me to ask the questions, or do you just want to ask?
Oh yeah, no, I'll ask the questions. I couldn't remember from last week if you led us into those questions, but I can do it. So now, Celeste, we're gonna close the program with our James Lipton inspired rapid fire questions. So, what is your favorite word?
Food's ready. There's more food. Tacos.
I love tacos. What is your least favorite word?
There's no more food. You can't eat. The food's not ready.
I love how your mind is all about food. Mine is the
Yes.
same. I'm constantly thinking about what snack is there? When's lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? What are we going to do this weekend for food?
Right.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love when I walk into the house and I hear Baxter running with his 5-pound little legs, running to come and greet me. That is my favorite sound.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I hate the sound of like cardboard rubbing. It's like making me cringe just trying to talk about it. Like when cardboard rubs against each other, like styrofoam. Ugh.
I understand. So what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to be a plastic surgeon. I would love to do like reconstruction and like fixing botched procedures, but I do not have a steady hand. Like my hands shake. So early on, I knew that that was not going to be my career, but I would love to do it.
Huh. And what profession would you not like to do?
Anything with like manual labor, I just am not into. I'm more of like a manager. I like to oversee. I like to delegate, and lifting and moving things sounds very exhausting, and I would not want to do that. So like construction, not
Any outdoor job.
not for me. I'll work out in my own time, but not at work. Sounds exhausting.
I'm dead.
All right. Well, I think that's it then.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Celeste, for coming on to the show. We love to have you. We value your input on everything. Seriously, it's been great. Thank you for the Center for Faith and Service for co-sponsoring us with this new idea that we're still trying to get on our feet with. But be sure to be checking back every Friday at 4 p.m. for our weekly episode update for After the Tassel. Without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and close out. See you guys.